born ready.
I can feel it. Hey, it's wonderful to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today.
Thank you so much for having me.
You bet. So before we get into your very interesting career, I want to know this. 5 years ago, this pandemic was raging, changing all of our lives. How did you live through that? And how much of living through that affected the way that you do things now?
It actually, I'll tell you how it affected in a meaningful way is I had started my book 5 years earlier. I was doing consulting, doing turnarounds with troubled companies, mostly with restaurants, but a few other industries. Everybody was shut down. So there was nothing to do. I had started a book 5 years earlier. I always wanted to write a novel. I picked it up, and every day while the state of Florida was shut down, I would sit in front of my computer for an hour or 2 hours and force myself to write. What it really did was it forced me to chase my dream that I might not have done otherwise.
Wow.
It took me 7 months of writing to finish. I was at maybe 6 chapters, 7 chapters in. It took me 7 months of writing, editing to finish the 74 chapters that became Death and Short. And from that, I started working on getting it published and eventually published it. I waited a few more years because my dad passed in 22, my mother in 24. And after my mom passed, I said, I'm not sure what you're waiting for. I found a hybrid publisher and off I went.
Wow. So you've had quite a career as a CPA, an attorney, a restaurateur. So I want to do this. I want to put you in front of a bunch of 12-year-olds at career day, and one of the kids wants to know about your career arc. How would you explain what you've done in your career up to this point?
Um, I actually started working when I was 12 years old for my father, who was a CPA and started his own firm back in the mid 60s. The purpose was he was going to train me to take over one day what he was doing. Um, I started doing something really silly and stupid. He had a client with a lot of employees, and back then, in order to prepare W-2s, they were 5 or 6 sheets with carbon paper in between. And every year in January, he would bring them home. I'd have to separate them and tear them. My hands would be black from the carbon paper, and we'd have paper bags filled with carbon paper. That's how it began. I
Yeah.
started doing that. I lived at home while I was in college. I worked at his firm. I went away to law school because he wanted me to expand my knowledge base. I came back. I got married, started having children, went back to law school and got a master's of law in taxation, and subsequently sold that firm in 1997 to a public company. They sent me on the road buying businesses. While I was out on the road talking to other accountants and consulting firms, buying their businesses for our company. And I did that for a few years and then decided I wanted to change direction. I'd been doing it for a long time. It wasn't thrilling to me anymore. And I started doing turnaround consulting, working with broken businesses that needed help and could use the wealth of my experience from all my years of working. I did that until 2020.
Wow. So what did you want to be when you were a kid? At 12 years old, what was your dream?
Sports writer.
Okay.
I wanted to be the guy sitting at the game, getting paid to go to baseball, football, basketball, and hockey games and write about it and tell everybody about how great it was. My father, on the other hand, because I had an older brother who became a doctor, said one of my sons will be an accountant. So that's how I wind up doing accounting and law.
So did you ever do sports writing in any capacity?
Uh, School newspaper in high school, but
Yeah.
not really. And I didn't know what I wanted. When I really decided writing was what I wanted to do was when I was 16 years old. I was in a books. My mother was an avid reader and gave me the love of reading. I was in a bookstore and I saw Dalton Trumbo's book, Johnny Got His Gun. And it was the story of a soldier wounded in World War I who was gassed. He was blind, he was deaf, he was mute, and he was laying in bed. And the entire story is told in his head, what he's thinking. And I realized the power of words when I read that book. It moved me. I realized words can take you to faraway places, words can take you into the middle of the baseball diamond or the football field or the soccer pitch. And the only limitation is your imagination.
Yeah. What was the first thing that you wrote that you got a visceral experience from someone and felt like, I'm a good writer. I can do this. I can move people.
It was actually a paper that I wrote in college for a creative writing class that I took. I didn't take many, but I took one. And the professor's comment was, wow, this is really good. You should consider, and I was a business major at that point, you should consider doing this. You would be great at it. And I said, okay, fine. And then I went many years and didn't. The next time I got a great response was when I wrote a letter on behalf of a client to get a dispute resolved. And the client said, wow, you write angry. I said, sometimes when I'm angry, yes, but you also write happy and you write great letters. Like people read them and you lay everything out and it's easy to see. But I always wanted to write with characters, not with facts. Not that I don't like the facts, but
Yeah.
characters create the story. So.
How long did you sit on this dream of writing a book and being a writer? Has it been something your whole life that you've
Yeah,
had in
it's
there?
well, when I was 16, I read Johnny Got His Gun. I said, I want to be a writer.
Yeah.
I really started to think about doing this probably, it's got to be maybe 35 years.
Yeah.
I would pick up things and make notes. I have files with pages, handwritten pages all over my apartment. And I pull them out and go, oh, this was this book. This was that book. I'm actually working on a second book in the same series and another book in a different genre, both of which I had begun around the same time as I began Death Insured. The only difference is now I know how to get from the beginning to the end. And I didn't when I started the first one.
So, who's been kind of an inspirational force for you, a hero that's allowed you to go through your life and your careers and find this dream of writing? Has there been a person that's really led you down this evolutionary path?
There actually are several. I don't think there's any one. I mean, there are writers I love. Obviously, Trumbo inspired me. My first thrillers, I was reading Lawrence Sanders and his first Deadly Sin and his second Deadly Sin books many years ago. Today, it's writers like Greg Iles, Daniel Silva, Harlan Coben. I have a friend, Pablo Zaragoza, who's written 30 books and is a great writer, very in depth, very unique stories that he creates. With regard to chasing my dreams, probably my mother and my father. My father always believed you can do anything you want to do. The only limitation is the fear you place upon yourself about failing. And failure is not a problem. Every time you fail, it creates a challenge you have to overcome, but it also creates the opportunity to enrich yourself, make yourself bigger and better.
So, if you could meet one person alive on the planet right now, whether it's a writer or otherwise, that you find fascinating, that might help you on your journey, or get into sports writer mode and interview them, who would it be?
Wow, that's tough. I'll tell you, again, being an avid Philadelphia Eagles football fan, I would love to have a conversation with Jalen Hurts
Yeah.
because I find his focus so unbelievably compelling. I wish I had that kind of. I'd finish a book in 2 weeks if I had his kind of focus. He comes into every event, everything that he does with the same laser focus. Um, he is disciplined. He is smart. He is thought provoking. So he is if I could talk to one person and exercise my love of sports, he would be the guy.
So, writing this book and being in this world now, what's the difference between the dream of you being a writer and now you're finally in it and in the business? What's the in between the dream and reality of all this?
It's funny. I thought that once you published, I mean, marketing is a big deal. I mean, going on podcasts like this, going on other shows is important. I don't mind doing that. I actually love to have the opportunity to talk about the book or the process or the people the characters. But the one thing that I didn't realize how challenging it was is that every day, and I'm not joking when I say every day I get multiple emails from people that want to tell me how to get my book into the hands of more readers, how to market. And it's hard to sort through all of that and figure out what's real and what isn't. And having been a businessman and having been a lawyer, having been an accountant, having been a consultant and help people grow and write business plans, it's funny that I can't do that for myself to the same degree I could do it for my clients because it's so personal and I have so much of me invested in it.
So talk to me about the book, Death Insured. Talk to me about how the idea came about and just kind of give me an idea of the flow.
Okay, so death insured is in its simplest form, I would say it's murdering people for money, but it's not that simple. The the theme of the book is there's a concept called a viatical, and this all comes about from my business background, but a little bit of it comes from my background that 20 years ago my wife passed away from cancer, and along the way I learned a lot about people dealing with not just the emotional and physical strain, but also families dealing with the financial strain. And so a viatical is a company that is a product, a financial product. Companies buy your insurance policy, basically betting on when you're going to die. It's like going to the casino and putting 25 on red or playing blackjack. The
Yeah.
difference is, let's say you have $1 million policy, they buy for $200,000. They keep it in force and they hope you're going to die sooner rather than later so that they get the $1 million. What happens in death insured is there is a company that is buying these policies. They form a charity for people that need more money. As part of the charity, you have to give them your medical reports, and they find out the ones that are either chronically ill or terminally ill, and somebody is killing them in a completely undetectable way to collect the money. So obviously, it's somebody in the company. Alan Miller, who is the protagonist, the hero of the book, his cousin dies. She has terminal cancer, but she dies way sooner than her doctor thought she was going to die. And that starts the journey of Alan Miller and Lara Shapiro, the other protagonist, finding out that there have been multiple murders, all for the money. And this has been going on for years. And they eventually come across who they think is the killer. But the book plays out that I always say to people there's love, lies, betrayal, sex, and murder. Basically, for where I live, a night out in Boca Raton, Florida.
Yeah. I love it. So let me
So
ask you this. If you were to have a dream tonight, ran into the 18-year-old version of you, ready to charge into the world and take control, and you could give that version of you a piece of advice based on this life you've lived, the wisdom you've accumulated over the years, what advice would you give that young version of you?
never stop chasing your dream, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Um, we sometimes get caught up in daily life. I become a very big when my wife passed, I became a big advocate of Buddhist philosophy in terms of the ways that you look at the world. Everything that happens for a reason. Everyone you meet for a reason. They say reason, season, lifetime, and that's true because you never know when you meet someone how they fit in that crossword puzzle that's your life. But the one constant is you and what you believe in you and what you want to do. And once you realize this is my dream, it may happen when you're 19, it may happen when you're 65, it may not happen until you're 85, but tomorrow's promised to no one. So every day, live and chase your dream, even
Yeah.
if it's little steps to get to the end line.
I love it. So let me ask you this. If you were to walk into a room of everybody that's known you in a business sense, as a CPA, as a restaurateur, as an attorney, and you could walk into that room and tell them one fun story about you, maybe the first concert you saw, the best sporting event you were at, jumping out of an airplane, a magical place you traveled to, a fun story, what would you tell that room?
Well, it wouldn't be about jumping out of an airplane because there's no reason to get out of a perfectly well running airplane
That's
before it
right.
lands. However, wow. Um, Interesting. So I was buying businesses for the public company and I was on the road quite a bit. My oldest two were 9 and 8. My youngest was 2 months old when I started traveling for business. My wife, let her rest in peace, was frustrated, but understood this was part of my chasing the next step. I had to go to LA to look at companies to buy. And one of the people in one of the companies was having an opening event for a big charity thing that they had put money into. So I'm sitting there looking at the artwork at this art opening, and a gentleman walks up next to me. This is the late 90s now. And he walks up next to me and he says, "What do you think?" And we get into an in depth conversation. And I keep staring at him because he seems familiar to me, but I don't know why. And he says, "Come on, let's go get a drink." So we walk over to the bar, and turns out it was Ray Liotta from Goodfellas. And we started talking. And the next thing you know, he says, "Come on, let's go down the street and grab dinner." It was such a fun night. And I mean, he told me who he was. He introduced himself as Ray.
Yeah.
And oh wait, then my head's spinning. Oh wait, I knew who this is. And then we started talking. We talked about the movie. He wanted to talk more about the art than he wanted to talk about and art in general than
Yeah.
about his movies, which was great. But he was such a kind and humble and unique human being that it was so much fun just to sit there and have a conversation with the guy whose movie Goodfellas I had idolized from the time it came out. And it was just very cool and fun. So yeah.
What a great story. So I love Field of Dreams. It's one of my favorite movies.
Yep.
And I remember reading facts about that because I've been, because being in Kansas City, Dyersville, Iowa, when I was like in my
Right.
early 20s, I would go up with friends and we'd play baseball up there and it was a great time. But I read a fact that was interesting. While they were filming that movie, his mother was passing away. She was, I think, believe she may have had cancer.
Yeah.
He never watched the film because it brought back too many painful memories.
I'm a big fan of movies. I quote movie lines all the time. My kids get tired sometimes, movie lines and TV lines. My boys get tired of it sometimes. I'm sure my granddaughters, when they get older and understand, will get tired of it. But it's funny because I also read facts about movies, and there are so many unique facts about that movie when they were making it. And that is one of them. And that's
Yeah.
true. I remember I didn't ask him about Field of Dreams because I was so intrigued by Goodfellas because his
Yeah.
performance was so captivating
Yeah.
as Henry Hill. And he
Yeah.
talked a little bit about that and how much he loved making the movie. So
Wow, that's amazing. Those serendipitous moments in life that are unscripted, that's the magic of being a human being, isn't it?
absolutely. I'll give you another one just because it's funny. I had helped back in the late 90s, Comcast acquire the Philadelphia 76ers basketball team. And the president of the team was a friend and had invited me in down for all these playoff games. So I went down to a playoff game. My wife and I were living in Cleveland at that point because I had sold my company. But he said, come back for the finals against the Lakers. So I came back for the finals and I'm sitting in the box. And my wife's talking to some of the other wives and people she knew from when we lived in Philadelphia. And a guy sits down next to me and starts talking to me. And it turns out it was Rob Schneider, the actor.
Yeah.
And he's telling me a story about how he couldn't find a cab to get down to the stadium. It was crazy in Philly that weekend because they had all kinds of events going on. So he hitchhiked down Broad Street, got to the car of two young girls who had no idea who he was. Like,
That's
as you said, it's those serendipitous moments that you
yeah.
meet people. And I've had a lot of them in my life, and I cherish them because I've realized that things and possessions are great, but what you really have to value are the memories and the moments
Yeah.
because the people you have them with mean something to you, or you wouldn't have had those moments with them.
That's it. And you don't realize it when you're young. You got to be around long enough to realize
Yeah,
you got to watch the cream rise because it takes a little while. But you do realize that the older you get, as that sun starts setting, we're not taking any of this with us. All we're
right.
taking is all of these good memories and giving back and taking care of each other. And that's it, man. That's the crux.
Well, it's funny because I quote Jim Morrison all the time. No one here gets out alive.
That's right.
And the other one is that you're right. I mean, you have to live in those moments. When they come, you have to be in the moment when you're out with people. My biggest frustration in life is, and my father actually told me a story one day, and it amplified it. He was on the board of a public company after he retired, and he would travel back to Philadelphia from Florida to go to the meetings. And he said, I walked into the Palm restaurant one night, and there's a young couple having dinner. He said it was clear they were on a date. And they're both sitting there like this, looking at their
Yep.
phones.
Yep.
He said they weren't communicating. And I'm thinking to myself, how do they get anywhere? How do they know
Uh-huh.
if it's right when you don't communicate, when you're
Yeah.
not in the moment?
Yeah.
So,
I remember two moments that were flashpoints for me. When the pandemic started, I had just moved into a house, January. By March, everybody's out walking. People are playing
right,
basketball. There's dogs and cats and birds. It's like Snow White just exploded in this neighborhood. And we were
right,
talking the other day, my wife and I, we don't see anybody out. No one's doing anything.
exactly.
It's amazing. Um, and that's the thing. It's like, and then I went to a Wanda Sykes show. We got free tickets, and they have these bags. I don't know if you've been to these events where you put your cell phone in it because they won't
Yeah,
allow.
I had a Kevin Hart show I went to was
Okay,
like that.
yeah. So we put it in the bag, and everybody's talking before the show. Everybody's milling around, having a great time, just doing that whole 80s thing where you just fraternize, there's no phones.
Yep.
It was pretty cool, man. You
So
know?
I grew up in Northeast Philly in streets where there were 100 homes, 50 row homes on either side of the street.
Yeah.
And I would be out until late at night. We'd be playing wire ball. We'd be in the back of the house playing basketball or over at the playground. Kids were running around. They were riding bikes. Nobody, cell phones didn't exist. Fax machines hadn't really become ubiquitous yet.
Yeah.
And people just communicated. When
Yeah.
I went to that Kevin Hart show and they did the same thing, I saw people sitting there moving their thumbs over nothing because they didn't have their phones because they were so
Uh-huh.
frustrated. They didn't know what to do with their fingers.
Yeah, it's wild, man. Totally wild. So let me ask you this. Of all of the things that you've done and accomplished, this very interesting, wonderful ride you've had in life, what are you the proudest of?
Um, Obviously, everybody says they're children. I have three amazing sons who made it through a really bad time in their life. My youngest turned 8 the day before my wife passed away, so it was a very hard, emotional time for him. He's a month and a half away from getting married, so that's great. My older son's been married for 11 years to a beautiful woman that he met on a school bus when he was 11, and they've been together for 25 years. And
Wow.
they have two amazing daughters. All three of my sons are successful. They're all happy. They all appreciate life. They came through something really bad and took the lessons of that with them. So they appreciate every moment. So that would be my single greatest accomplishment that I'm most proud of.
So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, everyone that gets your book, everyone that's worked with you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Um, that's actually an evolving perception. I, I guess the easiest way to explain it is, I said to you, I'm writing the second book in the series, and that's called Debt Discharge. But the book I'm writing in the next series is a book about a guy. It's later in life. His wife has passed, his kids are grown, and he's now thrown back into the dating world. It's a novel, but it's told humorously through some of my experiences and some of my friends, both male and female, their dating experiences, but it's told through this guy's eyes. And I was out one night to dinner with a couple friends, a couple female friends, who were talking to me about the book. And this is 5 years ago before I even finished Death Insured. And I'm telling them about the concept. And they started coming up with names for the book. The final title, which is the title I'm going to use, is called "Please Don't Call Me a Nice Guy. I Was Hoping to Date You." I am, to my friends, to most of my friends, I am the guy that you call because you have a problem and I fix it. I don't think, I don't ask, I just show up. I have a friend that went through a horrendous divorce recently and would call me at 3 o'clock in the morning, stressing about life. And I'd say, it's going to be okay. You have to trust. And we talk for 2 or 3 hours. And then she'd go off to her work and feel better. She
Yeah.
used to say, when I'm stressed, I call you and you get me off the ledge.
Yeah.
Um, to who do I think I am? I am, interestingly enough, other than the fact that there are pieces of my life I miss that I wanted to experience, but because my kids have grown and moved away, my wife passed on, I didn't get to experience the way other people did. But I'm actually in the happiest point in my life. I love what I do. I love talking about it to friends and family. The biggest kick I get, other than FaceTiming with my granddaughters, is when somebody calls me and says, or texts me or mess, oh my God, I love the book. I couldn't put it down.
Yeah.
When's the next one coming out? Um, so I'm a chameleon, I guess is what I would
Yeah.
say. I float with the situation, whatever it may be, and I just trying to be the best version of me I can be.
I love it. So if anyone wants to pick up a copy of Death Insured, get on the list for the next book, any of the good work in your world, where do they go?
If so, Death Insured's available on both barnesandnoble.com. You can click the link on Goodreads. Most people, I point them towards Amazon, and I tell them, when you go to Amazon, don't look it up under Death Insured. Look it up under A.J. Tyler. And the reason why is 9 or 10,000 books with the word death in the title,
Yeah.
and they rank them. That'll take you right to Death Insured. And the cover looks like, just if you don't mind, the cover looks like this.
Totally.
So
Yeah.
so you'll know you got the right Death Insured. I don't think there's another one.
Yeah.
Um, My website, ajtylerauthor.com, is actually being updated as we speak because we weren't collecting emails, but now we are. And in the next week or so, that'll be branded and out. And that'll have a little bit about debt discharge, a little bit about Please Don't Call Me the Nice Guy. And as I come up with concepts for future books, that'll be on there as well as podcasts, interviews, pictures, and all the other stuff.
I love it. I will put a link in the show notes. AJ, this has been an absolute breath of fresh air. Thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. This was a pleasure. Even if you are a Chiefs fan, it's still a pleasure.
It can still be okay. I love it.
It'll still be okay.
Absolutely.